Those of you that are in Queensland, it's really, really important that you do stay on because this date that, we kept thinking, oh, that's ages away, we'll face it then. I know what life's like. You're a real estate agent. All you care about is that buyer, that seller putting that deal together. And you've been very mindful of the fact that they have changing the law in Queensland. And it's essentially made that process both a little bit more consuming for a real estate agent and also a little bit more expensive as well. So we're going to touch on that. But Jared, firstly, let me introduce you to our audience. We've got real estate gym members here from around Australia and New Zealand, but I think most of them now are just in Australia that are on there. Jared is one of the key real estate conveyancing specialists in the country. He would probably do more conveyancing than any other firm. Jared, that's not an exaggeration, is it?
No,
That's
I think no. There might be a couple of the large Queensland-only conveyancing firms that do more, but I think across all the states and territories, we probably do the most. I think we're up around 7,000 a year. So
right.
yeah.
So, Jared, to kick it all off, I might kick it off on a light note. So, Jared knows anything to do with a real estate law. Man, he's your guy, right? Um, I want to ask, by the way, what's the name of the firm again? Let
Dott and
everyone.
Crossitt. Dott and Crossitt. Yeah.
Okay. So, Jared, I want to share with you what would you do in this situation, right? It didn't happen recently, but it has happened to me when I was really young, and it nearly happened. I'm in London. I'm in London as we speak, so I didn't actually work last Saturday. Was last Saturday a long weekend of some description? No.
No,
Anyway, it
it
No,
was
that's
long,
just
small.
your long weekend.
was just my long weekend. Okay, sorry. So what I was going to say, Joe, I saw it the week before I went away. A buyer tried to do the runner after an auction,
Mm.
like didn't want to sign a contract and pay a 10% deposit, right? Now, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I want you to picture this happened to me. I was a real estate agent in the Canterbury Bankstown area, and it was my first auction. And property gets sold, and the buyer chooses not to sign the contract and says they want to think about it, right? Well, my boss says, my boss's name was Peter Hall. He turns around, he says, "No, mate." He goes, "He's got to buy it. That's the law. Get onto him." I go out, I follow him. Um, he leaves, goes towards his car, and says to me, "I'm going to go get the deposit." Right? I turned around and asked my boss, and he goes, "Get in the car and follow his car." I follow his car and I park outside his house. I mean, this is you got to remember, I'm a 19-year-old kid, right? That's just started really 22. I get to the house it was in Yagoona. The house was in Yagoona. And so I've actually had to follow this car like a detective all the way from Bankstown to Yagoona. It's only a 5-10 minute drive. I get there and he won't come outside of the house. So eventually went and knocked on the door. And he invited me in and I told him he's got to buy it and this and that. And the long and short of it, um, Jared, is I think what happened is he never paid the deposit. It's so long ago, he never paid the deposit. He never signed the contract. And then on Monday, um, he was contacted. There was no lawyer. There was a lawyer's letter written, put under his door. Um, he then has taken it to a lawyer. Then the lawyers have spoken to each other, and by the end of the week, he ended up buying the property. Right?
Oh, well,
The
that
lawyer,
did not sound like that was going to happen.
right?
Yeah.
So, Jared, what do you do in a situation where like a buyer gets carried away? They want to like, what do you
Yeah.
say to them? Like,
Well, how long
yeah,
ago is that story? Like 40 years
30
ago?
years ago,
30 years ago.
30.
I mean, those stories still happen today. One happened just the other week, almost the exact same thing, and it wasn't a happy ending. It still happens. I think just a couple of comments on that. Well done chasing the buyer, but I think you're probably chasing the wrong person. I would
Right.
have chased the auctioneer. We've had that before, right? Where the buyer's pissed off and we can't find him, and the auctioneer's gone to the next auction, right? You got to keep him back. because he's got to sign the contract if the buyer doesn't. So
Right.
it's one of those sort of sacred, like centuries old rule that an auctioneer can sign for both the buyer and the seller at auction. That's how we get around the statute of frauds, which requires all dealings in land to be in writing. So the auctioneer can absolutely do that, but it's got to be the auctioneer and it's got to be the day of the auction. So don't let the auctioneer leave, would be my first advice. Yeah, you can definitely put the pressure on the buyer and explain to them the sword of Damocles is going to come down on him if he doesn't, pay the deposit is really what we're looking for that day, because it'll be an instant breach of the contract unless something's been negotiated otherwise. You should definitely do that. But a lot of the times, as I said, I keep saying, like, and all your guys on this, on the real estate gym will know this. I mean, the preparation for the auction, that starts on the Friday, talking to the buyers and saying, are you coming? Do you have your deposit check, or do you have monies cleared so we can use death pay? Like, just managing them around payment of the deposits, one of the most important things.
So, Jared, I'm sure you told me about it. I think you actually even sent me the note. I think it was only not long ago, it's maybe a couple of years ago. There was a lady that was buying properties and not going in. Can you share
Yeah,
that story?
yeah.
Because we got
That
about
was,
3 or 4 minutes
man.
before we
Oh,
start.
that was
Yeah.
odd. Hey, listen, let me tell you the story. We go back,
Okay.
right? Very, very successful agent. I won't name him in the inner west of Sydney, but one of the best agents there is. You know who he is, Tom. He called me on the day before we broke up for Christmas. I was out fishing with my son, and he said, "Mate, I need a favor. I need you to come back to the office, and I need you to review this contract and give a 66W for this lady who's rocked up." Because this is going to be this. We have not been able to move this stock, but this is going to be a street record. You got to do this for me. I said, "Mate, okay." So turned back the boat, went back to the office, but I actually called her. I said, "Look, I'm going to help you out today and do this contract, but you have got to do one thing for me. I don't always insist on it, but today I am. I need my upfront fee. I need $300 to review the contract. It's not much, but this is my fishing trip, right?" So I insisted on that. Straight away, she went a bit funny. This is trying to buy a $4 million house. He said, "Oh, yeah, look, I'm on the road a little bit. I'll get that to my account." I said, "Well, with all due respect, I'm going to come back to the office to do it. I need that before I start." I was a bit pushy with her. And anyway, I get to my office, sit down, still haven't got the payment. So I'm like, "What's going on here?" But the agent's on my back saying, "Come on, man, where's the 66W? Where's the contract?" So I go, "Oh, look, I'll just bloody do it." So I do the contract, whatever. I do it up. I finally get a hold of her. I said, "You haven't paid me that money." And she goes, "Oh, look, I'll get it to you. But can you do me another thing?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "Can you arrange a deposit bond?" And I said, "A deposit bond the day before Christmas? I mean, you're buying a $4 million property. What's going on here?" And I just had some red flags. I was going, "Nah, there's something up here." And I just sort of said, I said to the agent, I said, "Do we know who this is? Like, is she legit?" And he said, "Mate, trust me, she's got plenty of cash. I know." "How do you know?" She told me. "Okay, all right." And I was, "Look, she wants us to make a deposit bond." I've referred her to the deposit bond provider. The deposit bond provider's called me up and said, "Mate, none of her pay slips stack up. We can't do it." I've never had anyone decline a deposit bond. They declined her. I was about to call the agent and say, "Nah, deal's over. She's not going to do it. She's a dud." And he calls me up and says, "Oh, mate, all done, all exchanged, and the money's in our trust account. Have a Merry Christmas." I was like, "Really?" "Yeah, got the remittance advice. Have a Merry Christmas. Thank you very much."
That's amazing.
All right. So go off to Christmas with a 3-week break. And then his lovely assistant, calls me up on the first week back in tears. Says, "Jared, we've made a big mistake." I said, "What's that?" "Well, that deposit remittance advice that we got, we've looked at it. It's just a PDF that she's edited. We don't have the money in our. We've exchanged on a 5% deposit. We've put a sold sign up. We've told the world we've got a street record, and we're sitting with no deposit for 3 weeks, and she won't pick up our phone." So anyway, so I call her up because she still hasn't signed my engagement letter or paid my deposit or anything. That's why I mentioned her name, by the way, if anyone's interested. And I said, "Look, what's going on here?" And she goes, "Oh, no, look, it's all good. In fact, I've got another contract for you to review." I was like, "What do you mean? Like, you haven't even paid the deposit on this one. What do you?" And she'd already gone and done the same thing that day with an agent, another one, Tom, on the Northern Beaches.
Wow.
And I'm going, "What is going on here?" Anyway, so I said, "Look, you got to get some. I want you to go and speak to a broker because I want to be at the broker's a good way of trying to work out, as you guys would know, whether it's legit or not, whether I'm just imagining being paranoid." So I spoke to this broker, and he initially said, "Yeah, no, she's all good. She'll be able to buy the property. She won't be able to buy two, but she'll be able to do it, I think." And I said, oh, wow, okay, anyway, he circled back. He called me back about half and goes, nah, off that. I've just Googled a name, and you've got to go through 3 or 4 pages back in Google, and you'll find that she's been to jail for fraud, this exact fraud. Going around 10 years ago, she was buying properties, dummying up pay slips and whatnot.
What's the motive?
Illness, and the judge actually said it was actually some interesting stuff there. She's just unwell, like she's got this sort of delusion that she's can buy properties and that kind of thing. And I think in some cases she actually managed to through a fraud on the bank, which is why she went to jail for a period. So I guess the whole point of all that is like, just if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Like, just be
So,
careful.
so Jared, we're going to move on in a moment because it is. I know people would have jumped on. I just got to like this thing about having the mental capacity to do the deal. This was in the inner west of Sydney quite a
Mm.
few years ago. A lady was bidding on a house, um, and she had her hand up, and she just kept. And then at the end of it, Jared, she actually just said really loudly, "I'm letting you know, whatever you do, my hand's staying up." While my hand is up, just add another five. I think she said add another 5,000 every bid, right? So we're doing it. Ends up buying the property, right? Like way over because there was another buyer that really wanted it as well, right? It was a classic case of two people that just went for it, right? Long and short of it was this woman, and you wouldn't believe it, it was just a coincidence. I noticed it because I had just gone through treatment myself. She had brain cancer,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And what you could tell she had, but I recognized her from there. Anyway, by the end of the day, the real estate agent goes, mate, he goes, mate, we got a problem, man. He goes, she's like not sane. Anyway, the long and short of it was the owners turned around and they just actually said, listen, now that we know this situation, release it. Ended up doing a deal with the
Yeah.
other buyer, with another buyer at a little bit lower figure, but the lower figure ended up still being a lot more than what the owner wanted, right? So there. But Jared, obviously you've got to have the mental
You
capacity
you
to
have
do
to,
it.
yeah. It's one of the principles of contract law. You have to have the mental capacity to actually reach an agreement, and some people don't. And some people may give you the impression they do, but they don't.
Can I ask you this thing about people drinking, like signing contracts while they're drunk? Like, you know what I mean? Is that an issue?
We've seen it. We've seen a vendor do it before. Yeah. We've seen a vendor get vendor's remorse and say, "Oh, look, I was having champagne beforehand, and and just after the auction, I had another glass before I signed." Obviously, that's too late because the auction binds the vendor as well. But yeah, we've seen that before, definitely.
Yeah,
So you're best not to do it. Do best
best not to do it.
yeah, I'd say so. I'd say not. I'd say
Jared, now
not.
we got about 10 minutes. We've got 10
Yep.
minutes to do this. So on 1st of August, what's happening in Queensland? Firstly, explain it all. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys, the Queensland agents here, be probably shoved down their throat by now. But it is actually it's hard to overestimate. It's a massive change in contract law in Queensland. So it's now going to be mandatory if you are selling a residential property. It doesn't apply to commercial properties or properties over $10 million. Actually, it doesn't necessarily apply to. But you do have to include this Form 2. So the Form 2 looks something similar to the disclosure pack that we have in New South Wales and that in Victoria. Maybe not as onerous just yet, but I suspect it's probably going to increase over the years with new regulations. But yeah, it's a mandatory form that sets out a number of prescribed things about the property information that you have to put in. But most importantly and most costly, it's going to require a few certificates for whoever prepares that form to go and purchase an ad. Now, here's the really, really important thing. And this is where I think my observations, because I practice in New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria. And I would say in terms of litigiousness, you've got New South Wales up here, you've got Victoria here, and you've got Queensland down below. That not a litigious state, really, relatively speaking, which is nice for a practitioner, nice for agents, I guess. But this is all going to change, I think, because buyers are going to be able to automatically pull out, right? Automatically, if one of those certificates has not been correctly attached. And if some of the information in the Form 2 is incorrect, they can also pull out if it's material, and query what that means. But clearly, you don't want to be in that position where you're trying to think whether it's material or not. So it now looks very similar to those any of those New South Wales agents who have heard of New South Wales or
Yeah, but
contracting.
but Jared, so I'm a New South Wales agent, and that's where my license is, and that's where I practice, apart from, the block and stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's New South Wales. Mate, we don't do that. Like lawyers do all of that, right? I'm saying, are you telling me the agent in Queensland now, there's a higher expectation of
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, it is. It is. Look, and I won't lie to you. Obviously, I would like to do that work myself. And
Yeah.
I would also say, however, I would say that the contracts departments that the average Queensland office has are incredible. They're very, very good. And I think a lot of them are going to be able to do this. I think they'll be able to skill up because my experience is they're pretty good. My only question is, firstly, do you want them to skill up? Is that the best use of your resources that you're paying a contracts department? And secondly, do you want to take on that risk? Okay, because at the right now they're preparing contracts with almost little to no risk. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't recall any contracts department being sued for negligent preparation of a contract.
No.
Sure, it's happened, but it doesn't spring to mind, right? You are absolutely going to get this. It's absolutely in Queensland for whoever prepares the Form 2. You absolutely are. Now, do
So
you
can
want that risk as a real estate agent principal? And are you insured for it? Is my next question.
so Jared, do some real estate agents in Queensland use, and you expect that they'll be using, I mean, are you guys set up to actually, in light of this change, what have you done differently?
Yep. Okay. No, we definitely see an opportunity here to assist real estate agents. So we have. Thanks for the question, Tom. We actually team with Before You Buy.
Yeah.
You might have heard of this. These guys sort of.
We've had them on before with that
So
Reese.
we're offering vendors effectively just an upfront package for $300 where they can
Right.
get both their Form 2, their
Yeah.
contract, and their pest and building inspection. So you've got a complete vendor pack when you go to market. No liability for the agent preparing it. It all sits with me and the provider of the pest and building report. And buyers can bid with absolute confidence. That's going to be one of the good things about this new regime. There shouldn't be any sort of ummy and ahmy with buyers now. They've got everything they've got, particularly if you've
Well,
got a pest and building inspection.
I reckon that's a smart thing to do, because I can tell you vendors that have got inspections done on properties beforehand are basically arming their real estate agent with knowledge and power at being able to have the conversation with buyers on it. Because a lot of the times, Jared, what actually happens is, agents sometimes have to put deals together two and three or four times. They keep falling over because what's happened is building inspections, and don't get me wrong, there are times when it's a bad building inspection, it might have structural issues, but often what it is real estate agents haven't been able to sit there because they don't have the information or actually say, hey, I want to let you know. This is a 13-year-old property. This is actually normal. What we're trying to make sure is to look for that there was no structural issues,
Yeah.
getting it there.
Yeah. And
So I,
the other thing is, I sold a property recently in New South Wales, and I got a pest and building inspection done prior to, and it was great because the agent saw it before we went to the market, and he goes, "No, no, no, no. He's identified this, and that. This is going to cost you $500, $600 to fix. Let's go get that fixed now. So I don't even have to have that conversation with buyers, and the reporter can take that out of the report. And that's great. Rather than having to do it blindly and going to market, letting the buyer go and take 5, 6 days to get a report, and then they comes back with all this stuff that oh shit, I wish I'd known how to fix that. So it's sort of a no-brainer. That's sort of why we've sort of Reese and I have sort of put this deal together, sort of kill two birds with one stone. You've got your Form 2 and your contract prep solved, and your risk sort of managed there, and then you've also got your pest and building strata. So it's all I don't know if you guys are set up on the Before You Bid system yet, but it's all orderable
before you
on
buy,
that system.
before you
Sorry,
buy.
sorry. Thank you, Tom. It's all orderable on their system. So when you order the pest and build, you can just say drag across a free contract prep and Form 2. So I'm hoping that helps you guys. We've thought about it pretty long and hard. It's been a product we've been working on for a while.
Yeah. Well, I've got to tell you, Jared, I mean, my business, Real Estate Gym, spends most of its time more on sales and inspiration and motivation and strategies to do with listings and sales. However, I just know that as the years have gone by, I've got to say to you, I'm seeing compliance as being such an important. I mean, there are real estate agents whose businesses have been impacted permanently because they underestimated the importance of compliance in the state that they're operating, you know. And what Jared Zack does is help real estate agents keep out of jail and make
Yep.
sure that they're getting paid for the money.
100% success so far. No, none of my agent clients are in jail yet.
All righty, Jared, thank you so much.